Welcome to the Creating Wealth and Wellness podcast. Your hosts, Amanda Kingsley and Tara Misseldine, team up to take you on a journey where freedom is cultivated through personal development, where women connect to fuel their futures, and where wealth is created as a byproduct of being well.
Welcome back, friends, to the Creating Wealth and Wellness podcast. We are so happy that you are joining us again. I have a particularly exciting thing to talk with Amanda about today, and it's been on my mind all day. So I'm grateful that she said, well, let's just have this conversation on air. But before we get into it, let's start the show the way that we always do by acknowledging one of our awesome reviews on iTunes. This cannot be underestimated how much these help us. It allows other people who would never get to see our show or listen to our show to actually find us in iTunes, that they might stumble across us. So we just wanted to thank Ketchup Cracker, who left a really, really sweet review actually in the earlier days of launching the podcast. And it just is simple. It says, so helpful for me right now in this moment. Thanks. Thank you so much, whoever you are, Ketchup Cracker. It was so brief and yet so poignant to just, that's what we all need, right? That's where we all get what we need, is when we need it, it shows up. And we are so grateful that this podcast got to be that for you. Thank you for stopping by. And please stay in touch. So Amanda, what is your gratitude that we want to open this show with today?
Are you ready for it?
I'm so ready.
Are you sure?
Okay, wait. Okay, I'm totally ready.
It's you!
What? I wasn't ready.
No, it came up a lot for me in last year's, because in December I do a lot of just like review and processing and gratitude and goal setting. And I'm just so grateful that you launched this podcast thing, because I'm sure I've said it before, but it's something I've always wanted to do. And just, you were the woman behind the logistics and the courage, and it feels like such an important piece of my whole picture right now. I can't imagine not having it. So thank you for all you do to make it happen and all you did to get it going.
Thank you. Well, that makes me very, very happy this morning. Thank you. Okay, so my gratitude is actually for my daughter. And I know I say this a lot, but this is the one particular thing I'm feeling really grateful for right now. And that is the teaching that comes through my super wise child, where she knows exactly what to say to be both confronting and empowering at the same time. And I love the lessons that she teaches me. It's just really, really fun and awesome and makes me feel like a better person. So it's pretty cool. I'm grateful for my wise 3-year-old who's almost 4. Which blows my mind.
Really soon, right?
Yeah, like in a month. Almost exactly a month.
Mm.
It's really crazy. So I also want to apologize to everyone that I am still carrying around the remainder of this cold that knocked me out at the end of last year. So I'm sorry that I sound so nasally, and I'm probably going to be sniffly and stuff in the background, loud into my mic. Oh well.
Sounds fine to me.
Okay, so everyone, we today are going to be talking about essentially patience, but not necessarily the patience that's required in our everyday lives. We're talking on like the grander scale of like creative ambition patience. So I was, during my quiet time of reading this morning, I'm trying so hard to wrap up the last few chapters of a book that I totally love. It's called You Are a Badass at Making Money, and it's by Jen Sincero, and I totally love her. She's crazy irreverent. She's got a really potty mouth. She writes exactly the way that I talk in my head, which makes it really fun to read her stuff. And I started reading this book a couple of months ago, and somewhere in the course of the book, everything kind of shifted for me, and the slump that made me start the book went away. And so I've had a hard time finishing the book. Got 3 chapters left. But this morning I'm reading one, and she was talking about patience being one of the most key things that's required to shift your everything around money. And she had just like this one tiny phrase included in a sentence that said something like, let's stop peeling the petals off of our flowers. And I was just like, oh my God, that is exactly the wisdom that I need right now, because I've gotten through some of that like overwhelm slump thing that was happening for me for a while. And now like all of the flow of ideas and creativity has started to come back in. And I've already made the very intentional choice, partly through my, like desire mapping, the Danielle Laporte stuff that I fell in love with at the close of last year. And also the program that I'm in with Amanda, Live My Why. I'm extremely intentional about needing to choose nourishment and kindness and welcoming a little bit more rest and slowness. And of course, now is when all of these ideas are like flooding like a fire hose into my soul.
Funny how rest does that.
I know. And I have to like actively choose, like, I love you, welcome, not right now, and
I'm writing that down.
Okay.
I love
good,
you.
I don't want
not right now.
I love you, welcome, not right now.
I say that to my kids sometimes.
That's so true. You're right.
My husband.
Maybe a very universal mother tool right there. Yeah. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with Amanda, because she is, you are one of the most productive and yet focused, ambitious women that I've ever met. Like, you can just be so all in on something, which is something that I want and I value. I'm not that great at that. If I'm very sparkly, oh, this thing is very exciting to me, therefore it's going to get a ton of my energy, along with all of these other things that are exciting and beautiful to me. And then I end up I don't have that focused productivity like I see in you. So I'm excited to have
But all of our blessings are curses too, right? Because for me, I love we're seeker adventurers, right? Like, I love the new thing. I find the new thing and I'm like, this brilliant idea just flooded in and I know exactly how to execute it and it's going to be amazing. And then I do it and I love it and I keep going, but then I go to the next thing. And so my weakness is that I don't go to the depth, right? Like, sometimes I'm so excited about going and creating and producing the next thing that I don't get to the level of depth where real, like, grounded success comes in, right?
Interesting, because I see something so different in you. Like, from my perspective, I see you getting to so much more of that depth than what I feel like I'm doing in my life. But it's interesting and sort of resonant that you feel similarly. I'm sure that many people listening with some of those archetypes probably feel the same way, because we are starters. We love to like set the fire and watch it while it's beautiful, and as soon as things start to like ember down, we're like, okay, where's my next gasoline coming from? So what do you think of this concept of
there's so many things I want to talk about here.
Okay, go start.
So I love this idea that you brought up, that when you consciously like quieted down and rested, everything came flooding in, right? It's like you opened the doors by choosing that space, right? I sometimes say about feng shui, and I feel the same way about like meditation and that kind of like real spiritual practice, like grounding practice, that sometimes I can't do too much of it because there's so many ideas come in that I can't keep up with the ideas. So I get rid of the practice, like the feng shui or the meditation, whereas really I should just learn to manage all the ideas. But I'm like, I gotta stop meditating because I can't handle all these ideas.
Turn down the faucet. Yeah.
Really, what I need to do is learn to manage all the ideas. One of my favorite ways to manage the influx of new ideas, I can't remember now who introduced it to me. Maybe somebody listening knows who sent this concept out into the world, but is the parking lot. And so I use like a 3-ring binder planner because I always want to add new things to it. Anyway, I always have a place. I even have a place on my Google Keep board that says parking lot. And so sometimes I get an idea and I immediately put it in the parking lot. And if I can't stop thinking about that idea, I know I'm supposed to execute it. But a lot of times just putting it in the parking lot as like a someday project is enough to give me the clarity of whether or not I'm supposed to move forward and let it bloom like the flower Jen's talking about, or let it bloom in its own time and wait until it calls me back.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I have sort of a similar strategy. And I use Trello, which I know you hate.
I know. I love how different we are. It's my favorite thing about us.
And I have a similar list that is called ideas for later. And I agree with you that I will like have these ideas, and it feels better just to put them somewhere knowing that I'm not going to lose them and that I can revisit it later, but it's not like I need to hold it in my head. I find the most challenging, and maybe this, I'd like to know how you feel about this too. The most challenging is when one of those ideas feels like it would really serve something else that I'm already actively doing. Right. But it would definitely either require a lot more time or take things in a slight pivot, or if it would impact what I'm currently committed to in a big way. Sometimes, even though like that's my biggest battle, is when I have those ideas, because it makes perfect sense in certain categories to do it, but in other categories, really not. So being willing to have that conversation with myself and actually look at both, options, like that seems to be the hardest place for me, is when I'm like super torn on whether or not it belongs in my current to do or in my ideas for later.
Right. So being the why girl, of course, the first question I ask myself is like, is this in alignment with my why? Mm-hmm. Number one question always for me. The next question is like, I look at what else is on my plate. This is sort of the concept you're looking at, is I look at what else is on my plate and say, does this serve, like fertilize, feed, fuel the projects that are already on my plate, or does it take away from them? Mm-hmm. It's exactly what you said, which is just a major self-discovery process and growth discovery process. And there's no right way to do it. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about. It's just the two of us coming together and going, here's what I do. Here's what I do. This is where it's working. This is where it's not working. But it's a really interesting thing to think about and to look at.
Yeah, totally. So this actually just reminded me of a book that was, the concept of it was very transformative for me, like not last year, but the year before. And it was The One Thing.
Yes.
Who is that? Applebaum or something like that?
It's the real estate guy, Keller.
Okay, we'll look it up and we'll make sure that we include.
I can see it across my room.
Oh.
It's a real estate. Is it Keller? Anyway.
Yeah. So the idea, for anyone who hasn't read the book or doesn't know what I'm talking about when I reference The One Thing, I use it all the time in my management of my cleaning company, because I manage a large team and we're all sort of working toward similar goals on different stuff many times. But the idea is that when you have a big, huge list of things to do, prioritize the one thing that would actually make everything else easier or unnecessary, which is really hard to do for me, because I love to look at a giant to-do list and I'm always drawn to like the low-hanging fruit, at the very least to like develop momentum to actually tackle the rest of the list. But oftentimes that leaves me doing all of like, the fruity stuff, all of the stuff that was fun to do and not super impactful. And then sometimes really important things get pushed to the point where I'm either exhausted because of everything that I've already tackled, or I don't actually get to them because I simply run out of time. So that is really, I don't know how that connects to this patience, but I think it does.
Well, it gave me a huge aha about my own life right now. It's funny because just yesterday I was listening to a podcast that mentioned The One Thing again, and now you're talking about it again. And as you were talking, I was like,
"It's a fly! It's a fly!
I know what I need to do, and I don't want to do it." So, thanks all you listeners for listening through this, so I could have my aha moment.
Well, we are here to learn too. Like, we can't stress that enough. I feel like I was called to do this podcast to give me the opportunity to bounce off of Amanda more often, because this is what happens for us.
Good
So,
stuff.
thanks. Yeah. Okay.
So
So
I know this both I think we have like maybe 2 more minutes before we should wrap up, but this came up for both of us this morning, which is why we decided to talk about it. It wasn't on our list of topics that we intended to record about today, but it came up and felt really important. So I'm curious now, based on this conversation, I'm thinking about and this might obviously change, but I'm thinking about the project it came up for me today and whether or not I'm going to move forward. And I'm curious whether or not you are going to move forward, what you're going to do with what you thought about this morning. Like, how did this conversation change where you were at this morning?
Yeah, well, interestingly, I hadn't, I still want to put it through my why. I think I need to go through that process a little more deeply.
Yep.
With permission. Like, I think that I'm scared of saying yes to it, even if it's the right thing. And I think that's because I'm not exactly clear on how it is impacting my why and my intentions right now. It just feels like a big thing, but it might be a really good big thing. And that's, I guess, the piece that I'm not clear on. So that's what I will be doing, is taking it deeper into my why program.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I like that answer. It is. It's always the first question I ask. And then it's like, how else does it impact everything else? It's so important.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, that was fun. I don't even know. I hope it was helpful to everybody, because I feel like there was so much content in there that we just kept bouncing.
I know. Well, feel free to let us know. We're welcome to constructive feedback too.
And if anyone has other ways that they sort of decide when, or, one thing that keeps coming up for me that I feel like I need to say out loud before we wrap up is the other book that I come back to a lot, which is, I'm looking at David Allen's Getting Things Done. Mm-hmm. And so Tara and I didn't even share with each other what our projects were this morning that came to us, our creative genius. But I keep thinking about David Allen and his concept of, like, if you can do it in, what does he say, less than 2 minutes or less than 3 minutes, just do it. And so obviously the project I came up with today can't be done in 2 minutes and be done. But sort of that concept of, like, is it small enough that you can just make it a part of your life really easy, or is it so big and you can just get it done? It doesn't, like, require all this, like, massive production, because the project I want to do could be like maybe 15 minutes a week and would have a huge impact. So it's a similar concept to David Allen's, like, if you can do it quickly, just do it and move on. Yeah. So anyway, that's another book that helps me, like, decide where to put things, getting things done.
Cool. Well, we will put both of them in the show notes, because we are both devotees to good books.
Yeah.
And even mediocre books, I think I always get something worthwhile out of, even if, like, it was just the one little nugget. So you never know which one's going to, like, be the tipping point for you.
Absolutely. And you were talking about finishing the last 3 chapters of that book. And I don't believe that we have to finish books. I believe that, like, we're called back to them to read the sections that we're meant to read. And it's totally okay. If you pick up the first 3 pages and have a major aha, like, go ahead and read the rest of the book, or set it down until you're ready to pick it up again.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that validation. Because there have actually probably only been maybe a handful of books that I have read cover to cover.
Yeah, I think you're winning. All right, let's move on to our asks. Does that sound good?
Yes, I have a very, very clear, easy ask.
Go.
Listeners, if you have not yet, please go to amandastarkingsley.com and get more information on the Live Your Why program. I have been doing it now. We have had our first, like, in-person coaching session. And if you're not doing this, you are missing out, and that's where I'm going to end it. please go and get more information at the very least. You're going to need it sooner or later.
You're a doll. Oh, I'm so glad it's helpful to you. That was one of those projects that came to me in a massive download. I was like, the world needs this. All right. Well, how do I even follow that up, girlfriend?
You have it planned out, don't you? What you want to do?
Well, I did. I made
so good about coming
now I
up
have to choose from my list, but I'm just going to stick to really logistical because and Tara, maybe you can help me with this too. Super emotional, like Tara just hit me with. I am traveling just for a weekend work trip in 2 weeks. And so I'm always curious what people's travel tips are. Like, what are your weekend airport travel tips? Being productive on the plane travel tips, getting good sleep travel tips. If you have any, hit me with them because I'm going to be doing more travel in my future, and especially for little work events. And I'm always curious. I think they can be helpful to everyone.
Yeah, awesome. That's a good one, especially for parents because sometimes it adds a different dimension.
Right?
All right, cool. Well, thank you, everybody. And until next time, be awesome.
All right. Love ya.
Bye. Love you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode. If you haven't already done so, please do us the honor of leaving a rating and review on iTunes and check in with us on social. Amanda Kingsley is a work-from-home mother of 3. Her mission is to empower others to live fuller lives. Learn more about her at her website, amandastarkingsley.com. Tara Missildine is a passionate entrepreneur founding several businesses over the last 15 years. She's currently living the adventure of being a CEO, mom, and collaborative coach. Find her at allin.life.